Is my lipstick bleeding all over? It's because I need to drink my tea. Anyways, welcome back to my channel, guys, and welcome to another dupe video, or rather duping the vibes of palettes. Together with the Melt Amor Eterno video, this is another one of those dupe videos where I don't own the palettes and I'm trying to actually look into my collection, mainly of single shadows in this case, and see what colors I have in common and do I really need to buy the new palette. These videos are very useful for me, and I think that I might share with you so that maybe it is useful for you as well. And it actually worked for the Melt Amor Eterno, Muerte and Vida palettes, and I haven't bought them yet. I still have that mix of shades here in a separate palette to make sure that I use it and to see if I would use the two Melt palettes enough. But this time we are instead tackling 3 different palettes, and we're tackling the newer Huda Beauty Nude Obsessions. There are 3 palettes, a light, a medium and a dark, and each of them have 9 shadows. I was really intrigued and interested in them, especially in the medium one, because they look super friendly for travel and just a nice compact little palette where you can find all of your neutral needs. And I personally don't think they are tied to any skin tone, but rather what your coloring and one would say what your color analysis would do. Personally, as I said, I was the most interested in the medium. The dark one was very, very nice, but I felt it was a little bit too berry and pink for my liking, and the light was definitely too pink and purple for my liking. But nevertheless, I pulled out my collection of single eyeshadows and made this giant monster of a palette. And as you can see here, I have a few suggestions for the light one, a lot of suggestions for the medium one, and quite a few for the deep. And these dupes have mainly come from me looking at swatches on Temptalia's website, as well as the articles and swatches from Angela Mary Tanner on her blog Our Beauty Cult and on her Instagram. I will link these down below because they did amazing work, both Angela and Christine, on finding dupes and on swatching these. And since I don't have the palette, that is where I went from. I have to say, once again, I realize that I have so many of these shades and I really don't need the Huda Beauty palettes. And I've heard from friends that have them that they're not the most amazing quality that you say, oh, you really need to have it. Like I would say a Melt Gemini palette is something that even if you have similar shades, you should definitely get because the quality is really good. In this case, not so much. Let's start with the first palette, and that is the light palette. This one here has quite light pinky vibes, and it definitely looks like something more for a cool toned person, even though there's quite a bit of warm tones too. So actually, I don't know. The accent shades are a little bit more cool toned, I feel, and especially that purple pulls the eye towards a more cool tone look. Anyways, I pulled out some possible dupes from my collection, and I'm gonna start from the first shade. The first shade looks like a muted mauve transition, and I pulled out these 2 options: Artemisia from Nabla or Cupcake from Makeup Geek. They're a bit different, and Artemisia is a little bit darker, so I actually think this is a better dupe for this shade, and I'll swatch it right here. And this is a beautiful muted mauve. I really, really like this shade. I barely use it though, and as I expected, that doesn't really make me want to buy the palette. And Cupcake here is a lighter pink, but it is definitely a favorite of mine. You can see there's actually quite a bit of a dip because it's a great transition for any berry or pink toned looks that you want to do. It's a beautiful shade. If you've seen my single eyeshadow declutter, you know that these are untouchable for me, these Makeup Geeks. They're my collection. I have almost every one that they released, except for the ones that I couldn't get my hands on. The next shade up is this purple that really attracts the attention in this palette, and I pulled out another purple with a shift, and that is Makeup Geek Hot Pants. And I love the look of this, but I again barely use it. I have a nail polish color like this that I use a lot, but not really the eyeshadow. It is a beautiful magenta with a light blue shift on top. Definitely a pretty shade, and enough for me to dupe the shade in the palette. Then we move to another pinky transition. This is a little bit lighter, and this is Colourpop Say I Do. This is a light pink, and you can compare it to Cupcake from Makeup Geek. I can't speak, I'm sorry. And you can see that it's a little bit brighter, a little bit lighter. And this guy here is also a great pink transition. I really like this. It's one of these shades that I don't wear a lot, but I like to have. Then we move to the second row. The second row, the first shade on there, to me looks a little bit like a, I don't know, a rose gold pink. This is what I see from swatches. I pulled out pressed eyeshadow that I made myself. This is Neve Cosmetics Coral Reef, and it's possibly a little bit deeper and a little bit more purpley than the one in the palette, but nevertheless I think it would fit actually quite nicely with Artemisia, for example, in this palette, and that is my dupe for it. Something that I don't really have a color match exactly, because I feel like it's a little bit cooler toned than, for example, Makeup Geek Grandstand or any other rose gold that I might have. So yeah, that is for number 4. Number 5 on the in the palette is a light cream shade, and I picked out So Pale by Makeup Geek, but you probably have a light cream shade in your collection. There's one in many of the Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes, or in general in Naked palettes, for example. And this one here is just a pale yellow toned shade, and this is good to, I don't know, set your base, set your primer. However, I would have wished this was a shimmer, because in all the palettes I find missing a inner corner highlight. So today I used the Mega palette to create this look with all of the dupes, but I didn't have an inner corner highlight, so I used my highlighter as an inner corner highlight. So that is one thing that I missed from all of the palettes. Next shade is actually one that I don't have anything like it, and it is a pink with a mint green shift. I looked everywhere and I really couldn't find anything that looked remotely like it, so I'm actually just putting my hands up and saying I don't have this. Angela Mary Tanner has given a few options, and her dupe is Divina Cosmetics Pixie Sticks. So if you want to find one like that, go to her. Unfortunately, here I don't have access to a lot of the indies that are in the States, and that is due just to the high shipping costs and import costs that I would have to pay. I would be able to order, but I don't think I am. I don't know. I think it becomes too expensive. Moving on to the last row, I pulled out the shade Misty by Colourpop, and it is a beautiful, beautiful pink, but it's like a warm pink with a cool pink shift a little bit on top. I hope you can see it. I should take my watch off. But it's a beautiful shade, and it's, I think, very, very similar to the one in the palette. So again, not really something I need to be getting the palette for. Then we move in the last 2 shades, and the last 2 shades are 2 more warm toned neutral. The first one I picked out is Kids by Nabla Cosmetics, and I can't reiterate enough how nice these the feathered collection pressed mattes are. They're beautiful. Artemisia is from the same collection, and they're absolutely beautiful. I use Kids a lot. It is one of the best transition shades that I have found. And the next one is more a little bit darker, and I pulled out Colourpop Top Notch. I think the undertone is quite similar, if not that this one is a little bit more red than the one in the palette, but not by much, I think, from at least from judging from the swatches. And that is the shade right there. So these would be my dupes for the light palette of the Nude Obsessions, -1 because I really don't have anything like that pink with a teal shift. Second one up is the medium palette, and just to give you an idea, these are all the options for the medium palette. There's a lot of them, and it doesn't surprise me because that was also the palette I was the most attracted to, the one I thought was the most interesting. And of course it was also the one I have the most dupes for, because that's the colors I fall for all the time. So let's start from the top. The first shade is a lighter transition shade, and I pulled out Makeup Geek Sora. This is one of the shades I think that was in the Mani MUA palette and that then was released as a single. It is just a little bit darker than my skin tone, so you can see it there. It's one of my favorite transition shades. It's really, really pretty. A little bit darker than what we just saw Kids here and Sora here. Next up is a dark deep gold shimmer, and for that I picked out Makeup Geek Legend. This could be a little bit on the dark side compared to the one in the palette, and a little bit more orangey toned. As you can see, it's not completely a gold. However, golds that I have are a little bit lighter in tone, and I couldn't find anything that was like really a deeper gold. The closest thing I can imagine is this shade here, which is bronze from Anastasia Beverly Hills. Ooh. Soft Glam palette, and that's this guy right here. I think this is the closest one that I have in my collection, but yeah, Legend, you can see, is much more orange, and I don't really have something like that in my singles. Something that could come close is Colourpop Board Shorts, and this guy right here. And you can see that we lose a little bit of the orange of Legend, but it's still not exactly a gold. And then Up an Atom by Colourpop is also a similar. There, you see, I have more of these orangey leaning golds than a proper gold, dark gold. I don't know why. I had no idea that was a hole in my collection. Next up is a transition shade that is more reddish toned, and I have two options here. One is Makeup Geek Apple Spice, which is from last year's fall collection. Definitely one beautiful transition shade. I really like this one. It is just not as deep as other terracottas that you might have in your collection, but still the right tone. It's really pretty. Another option is Crisscross by Colourpop, but this is definitely much more bold and in your face. Here you go. You can see the difference is quite stark, and you can see them like this. I feel like Apple Spice is a little bit more muted, a little bit lighter and easier to wear than Crisscross by Colourpop. Then the first shade in the second row is a lighter salmon pink, muted salmon pink, and there's two options for that in my collection. One is The News by Colourpop and one is Tuscan Sun by Makeup Geek. Tuscan Sun is one of those eyeshadows that if I had to recommend one, I like a starter palette from Makeup Geek, this is one that I would definitely suggest. It is a beautiful transition. It's not pink, it's not orange, it's not coral, it's very wearable. I love it. And The News by Colourpop is quite similar, but yet a little bit warmer toned, a little bit more orange. You don't need both for sure in your collection. I keep both because I like Tuscan Sun and I like them both. I just can't get rid of either of them. Both formulas are really great. And I think that really covers that shade for me. I don't really need it. I have options. Then the middle shade in the second row is a light copper or a bright copper shimmer, and I have two options for that: Flamethrower by Makeup Geek and Millie by Colourpop. Flamethrower is a bit more orange, whereas Millie is more muted. And here we have Flamethrower. It's really in your face, beautiful copper. And then, whoop, I'm gonna break them all by dropping them, you'll see. And then Millie right here. And you can see a little bit the color difference. One is a bit more bright and one is a little bit more muted. But yeah, those two definitely cover the central coppery shade, and I'm very happy to have them. I don't use them a ton anymore. I used to, but it's as if, you know, these purely warm toned orangey smoky eyes, we've just been there, done that, we're a bit over it, that's all. Next up is the deepest shade in the palette, and it's a dark burgundy brown. I have two options here if I don't drop them on the floor again, and they are Colourpop Feathered or Makeup Geek Cherry Cola. A little bit depending on how red you want to go with the two. Cherry Cola is more red, but this process of doing dupes definitely brought back my love for Cherry Cola. So this one here is Feathered, and they don't swatch the greatest here. This one here is Feathered. It's a little bit more of a proper brown, and then Cherry Cola instead. This will swatch even worse, I think. Yeah. Cherry Cola instead is a little bit more red toned. Don't get fooled by the look of the swatch. Cherry Cola works amazing in the crease and in the outer corner. I love it, and I actually had, since I pulled out these shades, I actually had again to fall in love with it because it's so good. I think I'm gonna switch hand because I'm out of space. And for the last three shades of the palette, I'm gonna start with the shimmer, number 7. The best dupe I have, which is what I have on my lid today, is Colourpop Thank You Next. And you can see this one is a multi-chrome or duochrome that goes from a pink to a coppery, orangey, even gold shift. It is beautiful. I hope it will show up better in the swatch, because on the screen it really just looks straight up pink, but it really shifts depending on the angle. I think this is gorgeous, and for the price of a Colourpop eyeshadow, definitely worth it. A little bit less complex eyeshadow, but definitely in the same tones, is Defiance by Lethal Cosmetics, and this is a little bit less shifty, but I think like the sum of the shifts of the other one, so that would also work. The next one up is a little bit of what looks like a muted, again, mauve. However, I wouldn't want to pull Artemisia in because I think we saw it before. I think it's a little bit more cool toned than the one in the palette. So I'm gonna pick out a completely different tone, and I think this would have fit much better. This one is Lethal Cosmetics Fahrenheit, and it's this red but pink. It's like, I don't know, it's a beautiful transition shade, and it's like it's a pinky red. It's very pretty, warm toned, definitely you see fits really beautiful with these shimmers as well as with the rest of the palette right here. Love this eyeshadow, definitely one of my favorites from Lethal Cosmetics because of its uniqueness. And then for the last shimmer, which is more of a berry, I picked out another Lethal Cosmetics shadows, and this is Euphoria. And this one right here is a, I don't know, I think a quite staple berry shimmer, very nice, and performs really well. So as you can see, I definitely have enough neutrals, nude obsessions, medium dupes that I really don't need the palette. And yeah, I'm really happy I did this exercise because this really got my wish out of it for this palette. Next up is the Rich Nude Obsession, and I actually called it dark, my apologies. This was possibly the one that would have suited me the most if it wasn't so pink leaning. I am a little bit sad that it leans so pink, to be honest. But nevertheless, I have dove again into my collection and looking through for what dupes I have of this palette. And I'm gonna start with possibly something that is not very accurate. This is Mango Tango by Makeup Geek, but I was looking for a muted pink, and other than the ones that I already mentioned in this video, I didn't really have any other. This one here doesn't swatch the best, but you can see it's like a medium rosy coral, and it's quite pretty. And I think it's slightly more pink than the one that is in the palette, but nevertheless, that would be my choice. Next up is a shimmer that is somewhat muted and not too colorful, and I picked out Colourpop Moscow Sunrise. This is one of my favorites shimmers, and as you can see, it's just a nice shimmery metallic mauve, I guess, of a shade. Very pretty. I'm afraid this is discontinued though, but it is in my collection and it is something that I really like. Next up is a red shade, and this one here, I didn't have an exact dupe or something that other people have found as dupes, but I have a pressed pigment that from Neve Cosmetics that could come close. This is Compilation, and I actually wore it on my eye recently, and it's, oh my goodness, so beautiful. You can see it's a maybe raspberry red. It leans a little bit pink, but it's still quite a shiny red tone. I think it also fits well into this palette. Then we move on to another shade, which I think in the palette they look so similar. So I went and picked out Colourpop BPM, and this is possibly a little bit less pink than the one in the palette and a bit more coppery, but you can see that it's not really orange yet. It doesn't look like the coppers in the medium one, but still leaning in this color family, so that's why I picked this one. This one is still available, I think. Next up is another medium rosy tone, and I think that again I would pick Lethal Cosmetics Fahrenheit to be here, but I didn't want to do two shades with the same shadow, so I also pulled out Nabla Cosmetics Verve. This is more purpley and cool toned than the previous one, you can see. So it depends a little bit on what you prefer, but I always prefer the warmer tone, so I would always go with Lethal Cosmetics one, and then it would fit better with the vibe that I would like in this palette. However, I didn't want to go double, so that's why I pulled out Nabla Cosmetics Verve. Next up is a deep dark reddish shimmer, and the closest thing that I have in my collection is Showtime by Makeup Geek, and it's this guy right here. And I think it actually comes quite close to the one in the palette. This one has, yeah, you can see it's like a burgundy shimmer. It has teeny tiny flecks of, yeah, I would say silver glitter. And I had to repress mine because it broke, but it's a really pretty shimmery shade. Definitely close enough in this palette. Then up next is a brown transition. I pulled out Popular Demand by Colourpop, which I thought could fit. I have a ton of these like medium dark, medium brown transition shades by Colourpop somehow. I collected them. I like them very much. I think it works very well with this palette, and definitely a nice transition. I'm speeding up, guys, because it feels like we've been here forever. Next up is a more rosy toned, and this one here is Stay Golden. This is one of my favorite Colourpop mattes they ever made. Let me see that I don't swatch on top of each other. And it is a very nice berry transition matte. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Definitely very close to the one in the palette. I think Angela Mary Tanner even calls it the dupe that she chose for it. And the final shade is the darkest shade of this whole collection, and it's a very deep chocolatey brown. I pulled out Aphrodite by Makeup Geek, and this will not swatch in the depth that it has at all on the eye, because it is a very, very dark shade. I'm gonna try to build it up with a brush to show you what the color actually is, because it's with the fingers, these mattes, especially the dark ones, don't really show up as they should. So you can build this up to be very, very dark, and it is the darkest shade in the palette. Definitely quite a close dupe. It is very dark of a brown, and I actually was surprised this is the darkest brown that I have, and yeah, it's not as dark as I expected. On the eye, it translates much darker though. So these are all the shades of this palette, and I don't have as many dupes as I thought I would, but nonetheless, I think this one also is covered. So I'm very happy to say I don't need any of these, and if you have found something in this video that was interesting to you, or that you wanted just a dupe to one or two shades, let me know down below. I'm always curious, and I love to hear when my videos are useful to you. On the other hand, I wanted to add one more thing, and that is what I wished this rich, darker one had, and it is a dark brown, like Steampunk by Makeup Geek. This is the most gorgeous deep brown shade with a copper shift on top. I love this. It's so beautiful. I did recently a monochromatic brown look on my Instagram using this on the lid, and it's stunning. Also, what I would have preferred, instead of having this palette leaning so pink, is if they went a little bit more in the red side, using something like a color like Frantic by Lethal Cosmetics. It is a beautiful, rich burgundy shade. I love this. I wish they had put that one instead of, for example, one of these, like this pink Stay Golden. It would have just fit better, I think, in my opinion. And then what I missed was also a nice bronze shimmer. And for this one, I pulled out BPM by Colourpop, and it's just a nice mid-toned brown shimmer. This leans a little bit rosy, so that could have kept the rosy vibe if you wanted to, but I kind of don't, it doesn't really, I don't see it in the actual palette, so I was a little bit disappointed. So here were a few of my recommendations or changes that I would have done to this palette if I would have chosen the things that were in there. For the rest, I hope I showed you that you don't need the palettes if you have these shades. Also, a lot of these browns I'm sure you have already in your collection. The only thing that I see is like the cost is quite low of the palettes if you buy all 9 shades in a palette instead of singles, and it's the convenience of having them all in one place. I do totally understand that, and if you don't have anything like it, I think they're very nice and cute palettes. I would have bought them all if I didn't have to like step back and think about it. So this exercise really, really helped me. I hope it helped you to some extent. Let me know in the comments down below if it did help you, or if there are any other suggestion, any other palette you'd see me or if there's any other palette you'd like to see me dupe the vibes of. And I love these videos. It just reminds me that I don't need more makeup, so it really helps to pare back the spending, which after Black Friday, that's all I am worried about right now. So thank you very much for following along in this video. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you're not already. And I will see you in my next one. Bye guys!